Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Workflows and Espressos, second episode since we decided that we wanted to hang out for a lifetime. I am really excited, and I think that's my MO at the beginning of every single episode. But this episode is very near and dear to my heart, and we'll get to that later. Right now, I want to talk about a couple things. Number one, I went to Verma Spring earlier this week, and I brought my microphone with intentions to record, and I didn't because it was in New Orleans, and, you know, we've got other things to do when we're in New Orleans. I went to the Lakers Pelicans game. I forgot they were called the Pelicans, and it was really, really fun. But more importantly, I got to see all my industry friends and meet new friends, which was really exciting. Some people that listen to Workflows and Espressos every single week, which was like the most flattering. My dog is like shaking. Oh, excuse me. Hi. Why don't you go lay down? And then you can do that at a later date. Okay? Go lay down. Go lay down. My therapist says that we shouldn't yell at our dogs when we're in a fit of rage and tell them to shut up. So I've been working on that. And just being like, excuse me, and talking to them like they're people, but sometimes I do it anyway. Okay. I was very excited to see my industry friends. And when people came up to me, this happened twice, right? So it wasn't like 100 people, but it was two separate people that I'd never met before that came up to me and said that they listen to the show every week. And I don't know, I think when you make content like this, and I think I said this in the first season, when you make content like this and you're not directly in front of anybody else, it's kind of hard to imagine anyone ever listening to it because it's just me and my computer, which one is why I have bloopers and like do embarrassing things or act awkward because I'm like talking to myself, you know, and it's exciting to hear people that like aren't my family, which I know listen every week. So thank you. I love you. But I don't know, like people out in the world that are in the industry that do like consume the content every week. And I feel so excited and flattered about it and just happy to hear that even like one episode or one part of one episode could be helpful to anybody that listens. So thank you. And that was amazing. And I am a very extroverted person, if you couldn't tell from Workflows and Espressos, but I definitely feel like energized when I go to conferences. And it's always fun to connect with people, but also just, I don't know, like the grind of being in the industry or even the distance that being in the industry creates when we're all in our separate destinations, like getting together, even if it's only 5 or 6 times a year is so special. And so I don't know, I like get so excited every time I'm about to go to a conference. And then while I'm there, I'm like, this is the greatest thing ever. I'm so excited to be here. And it's mainly to like hang out with people. So on the way back, I'm definitely tired, but feeling energized in a different type of way. I think like my extrovertedness has been fed. And then I did take a 3-hour nap when I got home from the conference yesterday. But one important thing that I wanted to say. So I've been in the industry for about 9.5 years now. Is that right? 8.5 years, almost 9 years. So basically 10 years. And I didn't really know. And by know, I mean like I've known influential people in the industry for a really long time and like looked up to people and have kind of followed the journeys of different companies and different people on LinkedIn for many years. But I haven't really like personally known a lot of people in the industry until the past like 1.5 years. And I was talking to Andrew Kitchell from Wheelhouse. And he was like, you've only been in the industry for like 2 or 3 years, right? And I said, no, I've been in the industry for almost 10 years. It's like the only thing I've ever done. And he was like, really? Like, I feel like I just like got to know you recently. And I told him, and I haven't really thought about this other than like telling a couple of close friends, but about 1.5 years ago, I decided that I was going to say yes to any and all like new opportunities in the industry, not like jobs, but like speaking engagements or conferences or boards or councils. And I thought to myself, like, I want to spend 18 months just saying yes to everything. Like if I get asked to speak at this conference, I'm going to say yes. If I get asked to like go here or be on this call or join this committee, like the answer is going to be yes. And my goal is to meet as many people as I possibly can and try to figure out what I like to do or what I want to do. And I did it. And I have met, number one, like so many people over the course of the last 18 months. And I've gotten to be a part of really cool conversations. And a lot of this, like, I don't think is because of me being different or extraordinary in any way. I think it's just like being accepting of joining new conversations, even though life is really, really busy, or doing new things that might take extra time and like cause me to shuffle things around in my schedule or take time away from being at home all the time. But it's opened the door to a lot of new things, like workflows and espressos being one of them. And I met Will at a conference like 8 or 9 months ago, and we became friends. And then he pitched the idea of the podcast to me. And I don't know, I've like so many doors have opened since then. And so I think if anyone is thinking to themselves, like, I want to meet a lot of new people this year, I want my business to look different a year from now, or I want my career to look different a year from now, or whatever your goal is, like if it is growth in any type of way, I know what I did was kind of extreme and like exhausting in a lot of ways. I think I took like 60 or 70 flights last year. So it was a lot, but I wouldn't take it back for anything. And now, because I know a little bit more of what I like and what I don't like, I'm able to be a little bit more selective, but I wouldn't have been able to if I didn't take that opportunity and say yes to everything. Okay. I've been talking for a long time. I mean, I'm going to continue talking for a long time, but I was talking about that for a long time. Okay. 2 other things. So first thing, or technically the third thing, I'm recording this also at like 6:00 at night. So it's been a day. Okay. And it's been my first day back since the conference. And I was wedding dress shopping in New York last weekend, which was amazing. And I did find my dress. So exciting. My fiance and I both have ADHD. You guys already know this, especially if you've been listening for 9 episodes, but this is like what he's like too. And that's why we love each other so much, because like all of our conversations start with one thing. And then the next thing, you know, we're like talking about going to the moon or whatever. Okay. So third thing. Okay. We talked about my website last week, and I'm so excited that we have this platform to be able to communicate with each other that's different than LinkedIn. But one thing or 2 things that I really want people to engage on my website with. Number one, like ideas for new podcasts. My creative juices get flowing approximately 30 minutes before I'm going to record every episode. So 30 minutes before I sat down to record this, I like furiously typed my notes out, and I'm actually really excited about the content that I came up with and like to talk about it to you guys today. But I also am thinking like deeply about the first guest on Workflows and Espressos and who that's going to be and what we're going to talk about. And I think I want that guest to be like a request from the listeners. And if it's not, then I guess I'll just pick somebody that I really like. But I don't know. I want to hear feedback, and I'm excited for when the time comes. And because we have never had a guest before, it feels like very sacred to me, this like space that I've created and that we've created. So they got to be really, really awesome. So don't suggest anyone who's not, okay? All right, let's get into the episode. Today, the episode is, what is it? It's called Scaling Success, Navigating the Post-Startup Jump. All right, I need to just get settled here. I've got to move my legs back. I just moved in such a way that anyone watching on YouTube saw the absolute mess of cords that is coming out of my flat screen TV, and it is very embarrassing. And I have placed my head strategically here so that you couldn't see the mess of cords. But I would say that only 5% of people actually watch on YouTube. So I think we're good. Although you are missing out, because today I am wearing an amazing sweater that I love so much. Okay, we're 10 minutes in. Let's get this party started. Scaling success. Okay. Today we're going to talk about going from a small company to a medium-sized company. And these are terms that I've coined, or like buckets that I am placing companies in. That is all me. So like, this is very much my opinion, and don't take this as like the truth, more so as how I have interpreted like what I consider to be a smaller or medium-sized company, vacation rental company. And I do think that this can apply to many other businesses, like a lot of the content that we talk about on a daily basis. But of course, like the conduit with which I'm going to describe this example is the vacation rental company example. Okay. I've been lucky enough to be a part of two incredible companies since I have, really three incredible companies since I have started my career post-college and my career in the vacation rental industry, which, as I've told you a million times, is the only thing that I've ever done, which is, I guess, why I talk about it all the time, because I don't know how to talk about anything else. So, three of those companies, all three of them were pretty small when I started, and all grew to be relatively large, including the company that I am with now, Outpost, or the Outpost Group. And there were a lot of growing pains associated with going from a small to a medium to a larger company. I've also been on both sides of an acquisition. I've been on the purchasing side of an acquisition twice, where I have been a part of purchasing a company and watching our company grow. Once it was doubled in size. And another time, a smaller acquisition of a vacation rental company that was across the country, which came with its own growing pains and processes. And then I also was with the company for 5 years until they sold to a different company that was about the same size as us, which came with a lot of growing pains as well. And I think throughout all of those experiences, I started to mentally make note of like what this kind of growth, how it impacts the employee, right? Because I've been the employee on all sides of those transactions. And then I also have been fortunate enough to be close with business owners and people who have run companies that have grown and now running a company that's gone from a small business to a larger business. That's a totally different seat to sit in when you experience that kind of growth that is also scary and exciting. So I want to talk about this today and the changes that start to happen and how you know that you are kind of starting to outgrow what you used to be, ways to handle that, and how to keep this like heart of your company throughout the whole process. So let's get started, shall we? Okay, so first, I think it's important to define like, how do you even know that you're getting to like be a medium-sized company from where you used to be this small startup? And I think that there's a couple things to look out for and things that I've noticed. Again, I've made this all up, okay, approximately 30 minutes ago, but I think that it's really good. The Kardashians say Bible when they're okay, so the Kardashians, when they're like, I'm being serious, which I'll be honest, I've never really watched the Kardashians, but I do have TikTok. They say like Bible, like I swear. So that's how I feel about this criteria that I've made up. Okay, it's Bible. Anyway, how you know? I think when you get to a point where you have around 40 employees or more, maybe a little bit more, or you have I was very torn on this, between 150 to 200 homes. And I'm sure there will be some arguments about that, but that criteria, like 40 plus employees and 150 to 200 homes, that feels like you are no longer a small company. You are no longer 10 people that work in the same space and everybody kind of does different jobs, right? Like you are starting to feel it a little bit. You're getting bigger. There are some people in your office where you're like, oh man, I didn't even hire that person personally. Like X person hired them and I don't know them anymore and I own the business. Like you're starting to feel a little bit. And then you're also getting maybe feelings of discomfort that let's talk about these. Okay. So feelings of discomfort, I would describe maybe a lack of HR presence or like rules or policies that really weren't necessary previously when it was you and 5 other people that are starting to feel a little bit more necessary. You might be coming across issues, HR issues that you've never dealt with before, or questions, or you're required to be compliant with health insurance regulations that you've never had to be compliant for. Like things are starting to feel a little bit more real now on the HR side. You might never have had a budget before when you first started out and your process was, here's this bank account, let's try to get as much money in as we possibly can and we'll just pay people out as we go. That might sound crazy, but that also might be to people listening like, oh yeah, that's exactly how we started. You might not have a clear goal or strategy because you have been just kind of taking every home, but maybe now you're feeling like, I don't know if I want to take every property that comes across my desk or calls us and inquires us about our services. Like you're starting to feel like you might be able to be a little bit more choosy about who you're allowing in the portfolio, but you maybe don't know how to approach that. And if you're the owner, I think there's two things that could be happening. Or if you're the CEO, you could either feel like you are doing so much and you're so in the weeds and like you don't have the capacity to do that anymore because you've gotten to a pretty large size and you now have a team of 40 plus people that work for you. Or you're realizing that you think that you need to be really, really involved, but you have this team of 40 people that are really, really capable. And that could kind of give you this identity crisis of like, what does this mean for me? That I don't need to call every single owner and I don't need to make sure that we're cleaning every single house by 3:00 on a turn day, right? Like you're feeling like, am I still needed at this company anymore? What am I supposed to be doing? Because these really small, like operational tasks, they don't need me anymore. Especially if you're more of an integrator type, which I cannot believe that I've gone 2 episodes now and talked about being a visionary or an integrator because I kind of hate that like terminology, but it got me too. Damn it. Okay. So if you resonate, is that right? Resonate? If you resonate with any of that, yeah, I don't know. That's weird. Have I forgotten the English language? Okay. If any of that feels good to you, or if you listen to those points and you're thinking, yes, I'm either a part of a company and I don't own it, or I'm not running the company, but all of those things feel true. Or if you're the owner and you are running the company and you're like, those one or more of those things are true to me, let's talk about some steps to take now. And I am not an expert at this, but I do think after being a part of it multiple times, that I have some tips on how to ease this transition and how to make sure that you are getting your company to the next level. Like in all actuality, this is a really freaking exciting. Like you have built a company that's going from a really small startup to a legitimate, like larger business, which is really freaking exciting. Again, and I think there's a lot that goes into this and it can be overwhelming. And, we're talking about like the things that feel kind of uncomfortable and processes that you might need to put in place. But in all actuality, like number one, congratulations. Number two, you got to clean up your finances. Okay. If you don't have a budget, you got to get a budget. And if you are not the person to create it, then either someone on your team is, or you need to hire a finance person. And I think like, especially when you get to this size, it is so, so, so important. I've talked about it several times. Clean up your finances, make sure that your books are clean. Make sure that you have a budget for forward-looking expenses and income. Make sure that you have a cleaned up balance sheet. Make sure that you have your advanced deposits reconciled with what you actually have in your operating account and in your property management system. Like, get your finances together. It is extremely important now more than ever. Like, we're not playing small ball. T-ball. We're not playing T-ball anymore, okay? We're getting to like the minor leagues. The minor leagues, the major leagues, whatever. Anyway, it's getting more serious and it's more important now to have your finances together than it was when you had 10 properties. Although it is still important then, but I think when you're in that growth mode and it's just you and a couple other employees, like you're just kind of driving to survive, right? And now you are purposely driving in a strategic direction, moving your company forward, whether you're heading toward an exit one day or you want to pass this down to a family member. Most people are heading toward an exit, which is great. Make sure that you're kind of beginning with that end in mind, and that you have clean books. All right. Talk to anybody in the industry. It's very hard to do when you're kind of in that survival mode, but very, very necessary. So After you're done cleaning up your finances, you got to hire an HR person, okay? And you need to put some guidelines in place. I know that when there are 10 people in an office and it's kind of free for all, and if there's an HR issue, you deal with it on the fly and you're not really documenting anything. Like, as someone who came from that type of environment, which I personally loved because I'm not one for like bureaucracy, to an environment where I had more of an HR presence, like my initial reaction was annoyance until I realized like it is truly important, and not only for the safety and security of your business, but for employees too. Like, employees need a person to go to that understands HR policies, and that person cannot always be you. And if it is you, that's amazing. Like, that's going to be your job then. Okay. So like, make sure that you have an employee handbook and you have some policies, a PTO policy, whether that is like you have unlimited PTO or you have a set amount of hours or you have an accrual policy, like it doesn't matter. Let's get some things documented and written down. Have a process for HR issues, whether an employee comes to you with a complaint or a problem with another employee, or whether you have a complaint or an issue with another employee that you need to reprimand. And I don't know, like I said, my initial reaction when I'm saying these things is like, this is kind of boring. But it is really, really, really important. And like more so for ensuring, like I said, that you have a safe business and that you are not getting into legal trouble down the road. Like, you need to be compliant and ensure that you have these processes in place for your safety and for your employees' safety. So like, yes, it is kind of the lame stuff to talk about, but I do think that this is when it's important to start having these things in place, just like the finances. Okay, this next one is going to hurt a little bit. You've got to get out of the way. Okay, you just have to get out of the way. Jason Sprinkle talks about this in, I think it was Brooke Fawcett had the 10 mistakes that vacation rental managers have made over the years. And Jason said like one of his was not getting out of the way fast enough. And for owners, I think this means different things, right? Like, if you are a creative and you really want to be a part of the branding and the marketing, but you're also in operations, but you're also talking to all the owners, like, you have to pick a thing and you've got to get out of the way and let the employees do it. Like, you have built your business now to where you're a medium-sized company, you're doing pretty great. Like, it's time for you to drive the ship and point wherever you're going to be sailing. It is not time for you to be criticizing every little piece of toilet paper that you've been ordering lately, or picking out, I don't know. Okay. I don't have time for these metaphors. You know what I'm talking about. Like, get out of the way. You have this capable team. Pick like what is going to drive your company forward and where can you be most useful. I guarantee you, it is not in the minute details. It is, your company needs a leader, right? And if you're not a leader, then hire a leader who is a badass, who's going to lead the company where you think it needs to go, along with their assistance in their direction. And if you are that person that's going to lead things, then like, you got to get out of the weeds and make sure you're leading things and stay out of the minute details. So pick a direction for yourself, go there and get out of people's way. Okay. Okay. Get very, very, very clear on what homes you are going to take and what homes you aren't going to take. We talked about this last episode, and this all kind of depends on what kind of company you want to be. So I always suggest a profitability per property model, which I can talk in length about at another episode because I've already done a lot of talking on this episode and we've got a lot more to cover. But I think it's important to decide, like, are you going to go for luxe? Are you going to go for economy? Are you going to do a little bit of everything? Are you going to go for one area? Are you going to be spread out? Pick your poison, just make a decision. Then decide, okay, how many employees do I need for how much inventory I have? And then at what point of growth am I going to hire more employees and what position is that going to be? Like, start to plan things out strategically. Like, okay, if I bring on 10 more homes, then I'm going to hire another owner relations person. If I bring on 10 more homes and 5 condos, then I'm going to bring on a reservationist. Whatever that looks like for you, just kind of create this model so that when you start to grow, even more than you already have, you kind of have this this plan and this mold for what that's going to look like. And also, I'm not going to talk about it in depth because I say every episode, decide what your goals are and make sure that you have actionable steps to reach those goals. Okay. So you've got some homework. And here's the most important part. As you're growing, and if you go out and you create a budget and you give department heads different spending allowances that they've never had before, or you're very choosy with who's got a company credit card, or you've decided that you've lost money now for 3 years until you get to this certain place, and now is the time where you're really going to go for making money and you're really going to cut expenses this year. So you're taking away some company credit cards, like whatever that looks like for you, there are going to be growing pains. And we want more than anything to keep our culture in place. And our culture might shift a little bit and be a little bit different now that we have 40 plus employees compared to when we just had 5. But the most important thing to keep your culture, number one, I think, is to accept and recognize publicly to your employees that this amount of growth that you've had, one, wouldn't be possible without your team. And two, comes with growing pains. Like, it is uncomfortable sometimes. And as fun as it is, like, people who might have been there with you on day one and now are with you a couple years later, or maybe it all happened in a year and now have 40 employees that they work with, like, things look different for them. And I think that recognizing that is important. I also think it's important not to dwell on it. Recognizing that this type of growth comes with more opportunities and more responsibilities and more, hopefully higher compensation for those employees and more help with different employees that are starting on your team as well. Like, all of these things are great for your team members, but it doesn't mean that they're not feeling like, man, things look a little bit different now than they did a couple years ago. So I think recognize it, number one, don't dwell on it, number two, and three, communicate that this is good for employees. Like, and this does open more doors. So, number two, keeping your culture. Please avoid getting too corporate. And I don't have a defined, a defined definition. That doesn't make any sense. I don't have a definition of what this means. I think we all kind of have what that means to us. To me, too corporate means a couple of things. Like, I think when you have to deal with a lot of red tape, it can become really, really frustrating for employees. And I dealt with that firsthand when our company grew massively over the course of a short amount of time. You know, we went from having this really open environment where it felt like if you had an idea, you could implement it immediately. Not always saying that's a great thing, but it was like a very creative space and gave a lot of autonomy to employees, to then feeling like you needed to get approval from multiple different people, which could take months and months at a time. And I think that type of red tape kills creativity and definitely takes away autonomy and can really start to feel like your company has shifted in a very, very different and, like, dare I say, wrong direction. You know, I think the companies that are the most innovative and truly like the most badass in this space and in any space are the companies that move very deliberately, but also move quickly, right? Like, we're in a time where making fast decisions is of the utmost importance because innovate or die. Huge proponent of that. And I think if you have to wait 6 months for every single idea you have to get approved and be implemented, like, it really starts to kill that excitement and lead to this like humdrum attitude, especially for those employees that were there in a time period where you were really, really moving quickly and everything felt like fast and exciting and, change was abundant, but like the good kind of change that led to more opportunity. So I think there are corporate, I'm doing the air quotes if you're not watching me, things that are important, you know, like HR and budgeting and finances that we talked about earlier that I do think are necessary, which can also seem humdrum to employees that are impacted by that, right? And now have to use like a different software to upload their receipts or whatever that process may look like that's different and maybe a little bit more tedious than what it looked like when you only had 10 properties. So I think there are things that you do have to do to maintain this safety for your company and healthy growth. And like that will set you up to be in a much better position when you double your inventory a year from now, if that's what you decide to do or can do within your market. And then I think there are things like that red tape that can be really, really harmful. So avoid that unnecessary red tape and, do as much as you can to preserve that culture and that creativity within your team while also making sure that you have like processes in place that can set your foundation up strongly for future growth. Okay, next tip, do not become inaccessible to your employees. And I think this is really important. This does not mean that everything that you were able to do when you had 5 properties is still the case now that you have almost 200, or even if you have more than that. Like, I understand, as if I'm the one judging you. I think we understand and your employees will understand the fact that like things are of course different. Like you're busy in a different way and you might not be able to have your door open for 8 hours a day every single day. And you might not physically be in the office every single day because you have meetings or you're flying to conferences or whatever that looks like for you. But I do think creating a completely like inaccessible relationship with your employees can be a culture killer as well. Like maintain the fact that your employees are the reason that you have a successful business and the reason that you are where you are now. So please be accessible to them in whatever way that looks for you and works for you. So if that means that you're in the office one day a week and you have an open door and employees can come and talk to you, or that you have lunch out with your employees, like whatever that looks like, just make sure that you don't leave and never come back again, or make sure that you don't decide that now that you're so big that you're going to have a closed door and you're never going to be able to talk to your employees again. Like develop that sense of balance and keep this core culture again that you started the company with. And I think that helps with employee retention and the overall health of your business. Okay, 2 more things. I promise we're getting to the end, okay? You guys are like, you've been telling me a lot of what to do lately. And I have, okay? But I do feel really good about these tips. I had a whole 30 minutes to plan for this. Okay, be transparent with your strategy. This is another thing I'm not going to harp on because I have talked about this a lot, but this kind of goes back to the accessibility as well. Make sure your employees know what direction your boat, that's your company, is rowing in and what direction they need to row in, and be clear with your company goals. Even though you're getting bigger and that looks different than when you first started, I think now more than ever, it's important to start to carve out those things now that you have a more defined and secure company. And last but absolutely not least, perhaps the most important thing, keep your old traditions and make sure that fun is still a priority. So if every single Friday you have a pizza party with your employees, or if you guys do Taco Tuesdays, or you go ski for a lunch break every month, whatever that looks like keep those things. You're busier now. You don't get to see your team as much. Maybe you do. You're working on different things. The team is really busy. The company's booming. You're growing. All these things are really exciting and you're moving a million miles a minute. But those traditions that you used to have when you were small and you would go get beers with each other on Fridays, like fun should still be a priority and team building should still be a priority. And it helps ease these transitions a little bit. Like you might have a new credit card system that everybody has to upload their, I don't know why I keep going back to that example, but it seems like something that would be frustrating. Anyway, you might have new processes in place or a new employee handbook or whatever that looks like, but you can still keep these traditions that let the company know that you're still you and the company still has the same values. So those are my tips for number 1, recognizing that you have grown past a small startup. Number 2, when you get to a point where you start to realize that you need to make a plan of necessities now that you are a different size company and you're starting to feel these growing pains. And number 3, a couple of ideas to make sure that culture remains a priority for you and for your team. And again, congratulations. If this applies to you, like, you have done what a lot of companies haven't, and you have grown to be hopefully a profitable and expanding and booming business in a space that is very lucrative and clearly a lot of people want to be a part of. So you should be very proud of yourself and your team. And I hope you liked this episode. This was one, like I said, it was close to my heart. It's things that I've personally been through. And I'm sure you guys have a lot of other tips and tricks and things that you've recognized along the way. So please write in or LinkedIn message me or write on LinkedIn as long as it's not mean. I told Will that the podcast isn't big enough to have any trolls yet. But when I think of like giant status, like Serial, like Serial definitely has trolls because it has a lot of people that listen to it. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this episode. I don't know what next episode's going to be because lately I'm on this, like, my creativity comes right before I record, but I am excited for doing this every Tuesday. Like, this has been, again, like such a fun creative outlet and such a fun way to connect about hopefully topics in the industry that aren't talked as much about. Like season 1, we talked about a lot of like core topics in the industry. And now we're getting into like a little more niche things. So I hope you've enjoyed it. I've enjoyed this time, this 37 minutes that Joanne will have to cut out approximately 15 minutes of because I did do a lot of lollygagging. And have an amazing Tuesday. I will see you back here next week. Okay. Do not forget to subscribe. And if you listen to this on Apple Podcasts, make sure you go listen to it on Spotify. Okay. And watch it on YouTube, that too, because you've got to see my sweater. Okay. See you next week. Bye.